Tension in the city of Boston was palpable. However, the death of young Christopher Sider changed everything. It was no longer throwing back and forth insults between redcoats and colonists. The people of Boston were ready to settle their differences now with their fists and with their weapons. The Boston Massacre is one of the most well-recorded events in American history. We have hundreds of eyewitness statements, depositions, court records, witnesses, testimonies of this event. In this episode, I will be mapping out the day-by-day events leading to the tragic massacre that will throw American colonists into full-out rebellion. March 2nd, 1770. Private Patrick Walker of the 29th Regiment is simply passing by John Gray's rope walk. Months later, he would leave a rather blunt and unhelpful description of his experience there. He stated, "I would at times go to the rope walks in Boston. There I was assaulted, knocked down, trod under feet, cut in several places, and very much bruised, without any provocation given. I was assaulted by about 12 of the inhabitants of Boston, supposed rope makers, and left in danger of my life." Walker's account was rather vague. He didn't really recall the exact date or the events leading up to the assault. However, it was clear, at least, that he was trying to mind his own business, fetching some water where he encountered one rowdy rope maker, William Green, who provocatively asked if the soldier was looking for work. See, soldiers were allowed to moonlight, which angered local workers. Now, Green's offer of a job seemed innocent enough. However, the job that Green loudly offered was, quote, to clean his shit house, end quote, or often referred to as a little house, what you and I would call an outhouse. Shockingly, Walker seemed to take offense to the job offered, and a scuffle breaks out. One where Walker kind of gets his butt kicked. Now, witness accounts vary on what happens from there. However, drummer Thomas Walker, no relation to Patrick, recalled seeing the private in the street cut and bleeding very much after a fight with Green. Now, on the other side, rope maker Nicholas Ferreter described the scene when the soldiers returned to the rope walk. About 11:30 a.m., a soldier of the 29th came to John Gray's rope walk, looking into the windows, saying, "By God, I will have satisfaction," and many other oaths. Ferreter then stepped out and speedily knocked up his heels, which I'm assuming is punched him. The conflict, understandably, escalated rather quickly. Samuel Boswick, another rope maker, insisted that Green take no further notice of Walker. But the soldier did return with a party of 30 or 40 soldiers, headed by a tall, black drummer. This drummer was none other than Thomas Walker, who had been part of the 29th Regiment since 1759. And actually, the 29th Regiment had about 10 black drummers, all of whom were either from African or West Indian descent, a fact that a lot of people in Boston did not like. And this added to the fueling of hostility between the rope workers and the soldiers. Then and there, a brawl erupted, involving dozens of soldiers and rope makers, with even young apprentices as young as the age of 9 years old, like Peter Slater, joining in, who brought way sticks to the rope makers as weapons. Justice of the Peace John Hill witnessed the chaos, saying, "I saw 8 or 10 soldiers pass the window with clubs. I immediately got up and went to the door. They, not regarding me, knocked down a rope maker in my presence." End quote. Hill attempted to restore order, but chaos reigned. The soldiers, armed and aggressive, charged towards the rope walks, but the rope makers managed to drive them off. See, it's clear that Greene's insult ignited this conflict, leading to a tit-for-tat escalation. Among the rope workers was a young man named Samuel Gray, and among the soldiers were privates William Warren and Matthew Kilroy, names that you will hear later on in the week. Now, ultimately, the rope makers seemed to have the upper hand, with several soldiers requiring minor medical attention, while the rope makers reported no serious injuries. Now, in the aftermath, John Gray, the wealthy owner of the rope walk, sought to quell the violence. He struck a bargain with the regimental officers. Redcoats would not enter his property without his consent, and he, in turn, would fire Greene from his employment. And the officers would all do their best to appease and quiet down the tension among the troops. But come next Monday, it would become evident how effective that was. The next day, March 3rd, another fight occurs between British soldiers and rope workers at Archibald McNeill's rope walk. And McNeill would testify, "On Saturday at 4:30 p.m., I was working with 2 apprentices at my rope walk when 3 soldiers showed up, swinging clubs and threatening us. They called us names and asked, 'You damn dogs, don't you deserve to be killed? Are you fit to die?' The group was unarmed and didn't respond. Then a young sailor named James Bailey came by and asked why they didn't say anything in retort. Why are they not defending themselves? To which one of the soldiers, named Dixon, confronted Bailey about minding his own business. Bailey stayed quiet until another guy, James Young, showed up and stood up to the soldiers. The soldiers then tried to hit an unarmed Young, but Young was able to block it. The soldiers then turned to one of my rope workers and swung at him. Luckily, a worker from Mr. Winter Califf's shop saw what was happening and ran to get some bats. And with the help of another bystander, and after a rather violent brawl, we did manage to drive the soldiers away. However, unlike the minor injuries inflicted at John Gray's rope walk the day before, this time one soldier left the fight with a fractured skull and a broken arm. Alarmed by the growing violence between citizens and soldiers, Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Carr wrote to Lieutenant Governor Thomas Hutchinson, voicing his concerns about the growing hostility, asking for his help in easing the tension. That evening, one of the sergeants from the 29th failed to answer at roll call. A rumor then begins to spread among the troops that he had been murdered. The volatile atmosphere in Boston is becoming increasingly dangerous, with each clash further dividing the city. We will get back to the video in just one second, but today's sponsor is the Historical USA store. Yes, we have launched a historical merch line. Not only can you get Historical USA merch there, but we are launching a few very special and exclusive collections for you guys as well. I'm so excited to announce the Retro Founding Fathers line. Now, this is a nod back to the 80s, not just the 1980s, but the 1780s, when George Washington was president and America had a new constitution and the formation of a new nation. Now, these retro styles are what I call Miami Vice meets Rambo, and I think they're so fun for the summer. So go check them out at the Historical USA store. You can visit the description box below. But what I'm really excited about is a limited edition Boston Massacre t-shirt that we are offering you guys. The Boston Massacre took place 255 years ago. On March 5th, 1770, the Boston Massacre ignited the flames of the American Revolution, making it a turning point in not just our nation's history, but the fight for independence. So join us in commemorating the courage and sacrifice of those who paved the way for our freedom. This shirt is available now in limited edition at the Historical USA store. So hurry up, because I don't think that this limited edition will last long. Order yours today and keep the spirit of revolution alive. Now back to the video. Now, on the morning of March 4th, the sergeant had still not returned to his post. Lieutenant Carr and some of his officers undertook, without authority, to search the rope walks, believing that the sergeant may have been murdered there. Carr's embarrassment and the town's annoyance increased considerably when the sergeant shortly did appear, and he was perfectly healthy and unscathed. Now, this search operation really only adds to the anxiety and suspicion among the colonists, heightening a very already tense situation. And that afternoon, Hutchinson calls for a council meeting and presents the letter from Carr. He implores the council to assist the troops. However, the council unanimously agrees that the troops must leave Boston and that they will offer them no more assistance than they already have. That evening, rumors begin to circulate. Several civilians had testified that on the night of March 4th, they were warned to stay off the streets after nightfall come Monday. And Reverend Andrew Elliott had known since Saturday that many townspeople looked forward to, quote, fighting it out with the soldiers on Monday, that the bells were to be rung to assemble the inhabitants of the town together, end quote. Even a maid to Sarah Wellstead, Thomas Hutchinson's own sister, testified that she had spent Sunday evening with some of the rope walkers involved in these brawls. She then informed her mistress that there would be a battle come Monday evening between the workers and the troops. Well, that morning, March 5th, 1770, about a foot of snow had fallen, and a handbill is posted warning Bostonians of the soldiers' intent to defend themselves. It read, quote, "This is to inform ye rebellious people in Boston that ye soldiers in the 14th and 29th regiments are determined to join together and defend themselves against all who shall oppose them." But who really wrote the handbill? And when were they put up is really a bit of a mystery. Many citizens even then suspected that it was not the soldiers themselves, but maybe someone trying to provoke some trouble. At 11 a.m., a changing of the guard takes place. The 29th Regiment is now on duty, with Captain Thomas Preston in command. Preston is a 41-year-old Irishman. Even the Patriots admit that he is a sober, honest man and a good officer. Private Hugh White takes his post near a small sentry box at the corner of King Street and Royal Exchange Lane, where he will keep watch over the custom house. Lieutenant James Bassett commands the main guardhouse, the British military headquarters to the south of the townhouse across a narrow fork of King Street, while other sentries take up positions at various locations deemed important by Crown officials. By nightfall, there are more people out on the street than normal for an icy, cold night in Boston. Groups of soldiers swagger about the streets, jostling townsmen, threatening them with cudgels and bayonets. In turn, citizens respond with taunts and insults. Emotions run high as Bostonians prepare for a potential clash with the Redcoats. Private White is pacing up and down the front of the custom house. Just then, Captain Lieutenant John Goldfinch of the 12th Regiment passes, and the sentry salutes. At that moment, a young wig maker's apprentice, Edward Garrick, seized Goldfish and shouts out, "There goes the fellow that won't pay my master for dressing his hair." Goldfinch, knowing he has the receipt in his pocket, refuses to acknowledge the insult. Private White, however, admonishes the apprentice, saying, quote, that all British officers are gentlemen, that they pay whatever they owe, end quote. But the apprentice shoots back, quote, that there are no gentlemen in that regiment, end quote. Angered, White then leaves his post and walks up to the boy, commanding to see the boy's face. Garrick yells defiantly, I'm not ashamed to show my face. Angrily, White strikes the side of Garrick's head with the butt of his musket. The blow knocks the boy into the icy street, screaming with pain as he gets up and staggers off, clutching the bloody side of his head. Citizens Francis Archibald and William Merchant walk along Brattle Street, past Murray's barracks, in which the 29th Regiment is quartered. They see a soldier who is brandishing a rather large, broad sword. Archibald then addresses the redcoat, saying it is not right to carry it at this time of night. The soldier yells back, damn you, you Yankee boogers, what's your business? The soldier then strikes Archibald on the arm and thrusts his sword into Merchant's coat. Just then, 10 or 12 soldiers come rushing out of the barracks. The soldiers are armed with shovels, tongs, and bayonets. All the noise attracts passerbys, and soon the street is filled with regulars and townsmen, wielding whatever weapons they can find. Fearing a riot may break out at any moment, several British officers attempt to push the soldiers back into the barracks. At this moment, a Boston merchant named Richard Palms approaches one of the officers and tells him that the redcoats are not allowed out after 8 p.m. The officer sneers back at him, saying, "Pray, do you mean to teach us our duty?" To which Palm simply answers, "I do not. I only wish to remind you of it." After a few minutes, the officers succeed in pushing their men back into the barracks. They then turn to the citizens and assure them that the soldiers will not be allowed out again tonight. One citizen, though, yells back, "You mean they dare not come out?" And someone else shouts, "You dare not let them out," taunting the redcoats. Palms then warns the crowd, "Gentlemen, you hear what the officers say, and you had better go home." But really only a few men heed Palms' warning. However, at this point, most of the crowd really is looking for a fight. An outcry of "Away to the main guard" spurs the men to surge down the alley toward King Street, rapping the side walls with their cudgels, batons, and bats. Young boys race up and down yelling, "Town-born, turn out! Town-born, turn out!" At this time, nearly 200 have gathered in Dock Square, armed with wooden staves and sticks of all kind. The men mill aimlessly about the square, hooting and cheering. Those who have no weapons break into the market stalls and rip off legs of the produce tables and butcher blocks. It is at this time that a mysterious stranger in a white wig and a red coat appear among the crowd. As people notice him, the crowd grows quiet to listen. Who is this man? We do not know even to this day, but whoever he is someone that the crowd recognizes, is someone that the crowd is ready to listen to. He is there, obviously, to incite the mob to action. Now, we aren't sure exactly what words were used in his speech, but once the words he has to say are finished, the mysterious man slips away into the crowd. The men begin to rally, shouting, "To the main guard!" and the mob makes their way up Royal Exchange Lane toward the townhouse. It is at this moment that the Brattle Street Church begins ringing their church bell wildly. Other churches then begin to echo an alarm as if there is a fire in the city. Men all over town grab their leather buckets and head for King Street. Shouts of fire are screaming through the town. It is now 9 p.m. Men and boys are streaming into King Street from every direction. A large crowd has already gathered around the custom house. The mob has begun to pelt Private White with snowballs, sticks, and chunks of ice. Suddenly, young Garrick, the wig maker's apprentice, appears in the crowd and cries, There he is. There's the one that knocked me down, pointing his finger directly at Private White. The mob is outraged. Someone shouts, "Tar and feather him." Another shouts, "Kill him, kill the bloody brute." Now, fearing for his life, Private White runs up the custom house steps while the crowd continues to shower him with icy snowballs. Desperately, White loads his musket and levels it at the people standing below him. This action throws the crowd into a complete frenzy. Spectators begin screaming, "He's going to shoot! Fire and be damned, you bloody rascal!" White, now in a full panic, begins to scream at the top of his lungs for help. "Turn out the main guard! Turn out the main guard!" he screams. Captain Thomas Preston, officer of the day at the guardhouse, hears White's frantic pleas and orders Corporal William Weems to take 6 privates and go to Hugh White's assistance. Forming up in columns of 2, William McCauley, Matthew Kilroy, Hugh Montgomery, James Hartigan, William Warren, and John Carroll follows Corporal Weems out of the guardhouse. The men march down King Street, muskets shouldered, bayonets fixed. Preston, fearing there may be violence, has the good sense to accompany his men to the custom house. The soldiers push their way through the crowd to get to the head of the custom house steps. Here, the soldiers then fall in line as Private White joins them. Captain Preston takes a stance in front of his men, shouting at the mob to disperse. He is then assaulted with snowballs and curses. The crowd continues to harass the soldiers, yelling, "Why do you not fire? Damn you! You dare not fire! Fire and be damned!" Richard Palms, who previously tried to make peace at the barracks, has made his way to the steps. He goes and speaks to Captain Preston and asks, "Are your soldiers' guns loaded?" Preston answers with powder and ball. "Sir," Palms says, alarmed, "I hope you don't intend these soldiers shall fight on these inhabitants." The captain then assures Palms, "By no means. I have positioned myself in front of the musket muzzles. If the soldiers pull their trigger, I will fall as a sacrifice." Just then, bookseller Henry Knox, watching the spectacle, edges up to Captain Preston. Pulling him aside, clutching at the officer's coat sleeve, Knox pleads, "In God's name, take your men back. The people are angry and there will be bloodshed. If you fire upon them, your life must answer for the consequence." "I am sensible of that," Preston retorts. By now, though, the crowd has grown to an alarming size. It presses in upon the soldiers, voices challenging them to put down their weapons and fight, cheering that the redcoats are cowardly rascals. The soldiers, now feeling panicked and angry, are confused by all the uproar. Crispus Attucks and his fellow sailors are standing in the forefront of the mob. Suddenly, Attucks hurls his heavy wooden stick at Private Montgomery, knocking the soldier into the ice and sending his musket flying. A violent scuffle for the weapon follows. Montgomery retrieves his gun and takes aim. Shouts ring out, "Fire! Fire! Fire if you dare!" Crispus Attucks then falls forward into the snow. A bullet pierced his chest. For a second, there is stunned silence. Then Private Kilroy raises his weapon and fires aimlessly into the crowd. One by one, the other 5 follow Kilroy's leads. Sam Gray, a rope worker, falls dead instantly. A bystander, sailor James Caldwell, is also hit by gunfire. And a young apprentice, Samuel Maverick, who is turned to run from the scene, is struck by a wild bullet bouncing off the ice cobblestone streets, striking him fatally in the head. Patrick Carr, who is standing at the corner of Quail Lane, when a bullet tears through his hip, he falls mortally wounded. A friend would carry him into a house in Fitch's Alley. 6 others have also fallen to the snow injured. For a moment, the crowd goes quiet. Then all hell breaks loose. The mob, made up mainly of men and boys, scrambles up side streets and alleys, desperate to flee the scene. Only a few remain behind to carry the dead and wounded to safety. Preston then turns on his men, screaming at them. Why did you fire? A few of the soldiers confess, believing that they heard Preston yell the word fire. In disbelief, Preston orders his men back to the barracks. But this night is far from over, and the fallout is only just beginning. Thank you so much for joining me on this intense journey through history, and don't forget to subscribe. And let me know, did you learn something new that you didn't know about the Boston Massacre? Comment down below and let me know. And make sure you follow me on social media. I post a lot of content over there that I don't post on YouTube. So go find me on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, or X. Now, we are not done with the Boston Massacre. There is more to come. This saga is not over. But until next time, bye.